Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have a full review of Realme 11 5G. Let's get started. This is a mid-range device, although it is very curious because I consider that the last generation was much more attractive in terms of price. In Mexico, it has been launched at 8,999 Mexican pesos. That is approximately $495, and therefore puts it to compete in a difficult segment because there are many devices competing against it, some at a slightly higher price and others at a slightly lower price. But it is a range where there are too many products, and so it is likely that at some points this device could be below what one would expect, or although it may have some strengths that we will see throughout this video. In Mexico, its official distributors are Telcel, Coppel, and Sears, and some of them also include the Realme Buds T100 as a gift, a totally wireless headphones of which I also have available their review in case you want to know them. So taking into account the wireless headphones, it becomes a much more attractive proposition. It's time for you to join me to know it point by point. The manufacturer claims that this device has been inspired by premium watches with respect to its design, although from the front we still won't see any clues about that inspiration. Fortunately, it does have considerably thin bezels, but it's not something we don't see on other devices in this range as well. The curious thing is that they do not incorporate any special protection for this glass, nor the reinforced glass that we have seen in other Realme models, although probably the brand will ensure that it has enough resistance, but we would like more to see some special protection. On the right side we have the power button and volume buttons in a frame that is very curious because Realme claims that these frames are plated with a physical vapor phase deposition process, a very strange term but usually applied to fine jewelry watches. Although I see no signs of it being completely a metal frame, but possibly it is plated with something special to coat it and give it this totally reflective look. On the top we have only a microphone, and on the left side is the slot to place a microSD card, and in some countries you have the opportunity to put 2 SIM cards. In Mexico the second tray will be locked, like all devices sold by Telcel. At the bottom we will find headphone jack, microphone, USB-C port, and the main speaker. It should be noted that the device has very straight frames, which generally give the feeling that it does not grip much more solid. It has a weight of 190 grams and a thickness of 8.05 millimeters, and it is available in black and gold color. As you can appreciate, on the back cover it has a finish that reflects in an interesting way the illumination, generating an S on this back cover. And if you see it up close, you will also notice that it has some special shimmers. So the truth is that it does stand out and draws a lot of attention as soon as you see it, in addition to the fact that on the camera module they have also placed a very interesting ring. And this is where the inspiration that they claim to have taken from jewelry watches is most noticeable. However, this cover is made of plastic and therefore we could not say that they use premium materials in this device, plus it does not have any special level of resistance against water or anything like that. So in aesthetics it looks like something very advanced, but in resistance it could fall short. The screen is 6.72 inches, so it is considerably large, but it has the same proportion as most smartphones today. Its resolution is Full HD+, 1080 by 2400 pixels. Then we will have a good level of detail and good sharpness, although it does not get to exceed 400 pixels per inch due to the large size that has this screen. We are talking about an IPS panel that will offer a good front display. However, from the side you will notice that it immediately loses brightness, and in fact it is not a screen that can stand out too much for a high level of brightness, so outdoor use could fall a little short of the experience. In addition, the colors will not be as intense as we could see in an AMOLED screen, so the screen is definitely left wanting because in this price range most devices already incorporates a screen with more advanced technologies. The high brightness is barely sufficient, and the minimum brightness fortunately does drop considerably for comfortable use at night. And the nice thing about this screen is that it is able to adjust its refresh rate, which maxes out at 120 Hz to show very smooth movements, but it is also able to go down to 45 Hz on static content in order to save a little more battery life, and it has several levels where it will be adapting. So it is a very good screen in this sense, but it would practically be its only strong point because the rest of its features are quite simple for a device of this range. This device only has one speaker, which is unacceptable in this price range where most devices already incorporate stereo sound. It sounds loud, although it feels low definition or slightly distorted at maximum volume. As for the type of sound it offers, we will find what we might expect, with low frequency slightly present, but it doesn't get to be a sound that bothers. Join me to listen to a small test, although remember that it is not the same to listen to it live. It also integrates real sound technology with some surround-style presets, which is similar to Dolby Atmos, but it doesn't give us access to the equalizer unless we have headphones connected, and in that case it offers a 7-band equalizer with some presets available as well. So, the experience with headphones I guess will be good, but without headphones it doesn't really allow us to customize our experience very much. So having a headphone jack is a strong point, but if you want to use wireless headphones, it also has support for different codecs. The most advanced of them is aptX, so yes, you could enjoy high-resolution audio if you buy headphones compatible with that codec. Fortunately, this device does have 2 microphones, which is nothing extraordinary, but Realme had lately surprised me by integrating only 1 microphone in some devices. So here we have what one might expect in this range. Let's listen to a test of these microphones.
Esta es una grabación de audio realizada con los micrófonos de este dispositivo Realme 11 5G. Vamos a escuchar más o menos qué tal está su calidad.
There is no doubt that it will have a standard, simple recording, but fortunately it is capable of recording stereo sound. The front camera is 16 megapixels with f2.45 aperture and fixed focus. The sensor does not perform any pixel merging, so let's say it's a simple treatment. The camera does have a quick launch option, so even with the screen locked, you can double tap any of the volume buttons and it immediately goes to open the camera, although it's curious that it enters urban mode and not auto mode. The curious thing about the urban mode is that it expresses the focal lengths, unlike the automatic mode where we simply have 1x and 3x's. The capture speed, as you will notice, is good. In addition, you can tap on any area of the screen or show the palm of your hand to more easily capture the picture when the shutter is a little hard to reach. It also has a button for beauty options, where we will find many parameters that you can customize to modify your face. The selfies will be of good quality with a good level of detail and also good color rendering. I think it is one of the plus points of this device. It has fixed focus, but fortunately you do come out well focused at a traditional distance with your arm outstretched. And even if you are a little closer to the camera, it still retains good focus and good detail. In backlit situations, it doesn't have a good preview. And after the picture is taken, it optimizes the highlights and shadow areas better, although it still comes out slightly overexposed in the highlights. Indoors, the colors get much paler, so it is a camera that does require a very good light source to get good results. It also reduces the level of detail a lot when you don't have as much lighting. At night, if you're near some artificial light source, I think the result is totally positive. But if you're in some more difficult situation, the result is probably not as good in auto mode. Fortunately, it does have a night mode with which you can get much better color and detail capture. Even this camera has a portrait mode, which at night comes out very nice. Although in the day, where we can appreciate more details, we realize that it does not have such an accurate detection of the edges in people and even is not able to detect objects, so the picture comes out too artificial and false. On the back, the device features 2 physical cameras. The main one is about 24mm 108 megapixels with f1.75 aperture and autofocus. Here, the interesting thing is that this camera has a sensor recently introduced by Samsung, which is the ISOCELL HM6. This 108 megapixel sensor is modern and allows you another output as if you were applying 3x optical zoom as it crops the sensor. So, We could say that you have a sort of virtual lens with about 72 millimeters, approximately 12 megapixels, with the same main lens aperture. That will be one of its most attractive points, and in this price range probably what best helps it to compete, because the second camera, the truth is that it is not much help. It is just a 2 megapixel depth camera with f2.4 aperture and fixed focus. To test the speed of capture, I will try to take number 1 there. I will make a second attempt, and with these two tests I conclude that it is a device that is not functional to capture the exact moment. It takes a little bit longer after pressing the shutter to take the picture, although I wouldn't say it's extremely slow either. If we hold down the shutter, we have a burst of up to 20 pictures, so through the burst we could capture a more exact moment. In this camera, we will also have a special button to have a facial retouch with a single parameter, or also access to various filters that we can preview in real time. We could also touch the screen to adjust the exposure and focus, but if we want more advanced settings, we can access the Pro mode, which also allows us to take pictures in RAW for further development. It has different parameters that we can modify and even allows us to use a 2x digital zoom. In automatic mode, it does not have a document scanning, but it does have a specific mode to automatically detect the edges of the sheets, and you can do this action without any complications. In fact, when scanning, you can also select a different color setting for a slightly more optimized capture. You can also print this document or export it to PDF via the share button, so it is a useful tool without the need to install external applications. To scan QR codes, you must necessarily open Google Lens, although it does have a shortcut in the lower left corner, so it is an additional step, but at least it does include this option to scan these codes, although it is not as fast recognition. Moving pictures are captured with a good level of detail without a sweeping effect, and it has a high resolution mode, so you have photos of 108 megapixels, with which you could perfectly reframe your photos without losing detail. And the truth is that it does so with a good quality. Observe how we have a good detail even in objects that were far away, so in high resolution mode it does get to take good advantage of this sensor. The outdoor photos have good quality, although with slightly more saturated colors than we would like, but overall we could say that it is a good picture because the lens is not bad quality, with some distortions or exaggerated chromatic aberration, so we have good photos. Indoors also manages to give a good picture, although not with as much detail as what we had in the day, but consider that it makes a fusion of pixels to have photographs of 12 megapixels, but with good color saturation and good lighting, plus a good treatment of noise even in the darkest areas. At night, from the automatic mode, we already have excellent lighting capture, so here we see another advantage of the 108 megapixel sensor that is well exploited. With the automatic mode, you probably won't be able to handle the light sources well. But with the night mode, you notice how it improves this type of elements, and of course it also improves the level of detail. And with respect to the zoom, I must tell you that fortunately the fact of having a kind of virtual lens does work in your favor. You are looking at a reference photograph so you can see the distance, and this would be the photograph that the virtual lens would give us 3x. As you can see, we have an excellent level of detail, so we could say that it has optical quality. You can really appreciate the details well, and it's a very good level photograph. So although it does not have a telephoto lens, it can take very good quality photographs with the 3x zoom. In fact, also with the 5x digital zoom setting, we see excellent quality, completely superior to what we would see in virtually any of its competitors. Now you're looking at a picture with 10x digital zoom, which I think still shows us a sufficiently detailed image. And the maximum it reaches is 20x digital, although at this level I think it's starting to feel a bit forced. It doesn't have an ultra-wide camera, but instead you can take advantage of the panoramic mode to get slightly wider pictures. Although it's not a high-resolution picture, but at least it does feel good quality merging each of these photos to achieve the final result. In backlit conditions, the preview does not look optimized, but after taking the picture, I think it manages to balance better the lights and shadows, although the most illuminated areas can be very difficult for this equipment yet, since we are not talking about a high-end device, but overall I think the result is positive. The main camera also has the ability to focus with very good quality on small objects to take macro shots. And if you use the 3x zoom function, the truth is that the results are too attractive. Therefore, it is appreciated that they do not incorporate a useless macro camera and instead optimize optimize well the main camera of 108 megapixels. Finally, the portraits look good quality to me, with a very nice bokeh effect in the background and also good detection, so it looks like at least if they get to take good advantage of the depth camera they have to detect the foreground and background, we have good edge detection on the person and on the objects, so it comes out good quality. The only detail is that I wish they would give us the ability to take portraits with 3x zoom, but for portraits you only have the 1x 24mm setting. Video recording is in full HD at 30 frames per second, both on the front and rear cameras, so it doesn't have any 60 frames per second mode, which is clearly a weak point. In the recording interface, we are also going to find a button to adjust some color filters or also facial retouching. Only if you apply facial retouching, the video will reduce its resolution to HD. When recording your video, you can take pictures. You also have a convenient ring for zooming, but without any quick setting preset. Yes, you can also turn on the flashlight without stopping your recording, and you can also pause and resume your video. So it offers good features, although it doesn't let us rotate to the front camera without first pausing the recording. The video recording is much simpler compared to the results we saw in photography, as here I honestly feel that the movement does not go very well, the resolution is not as high, the exposure adjustment does become noticeable at times, and all these little details make the video does feel of a simple quality. Fortunately, in normal movements, the focus does not give problems, and when there are more aggressive movements that require the device to refocus, it does so with good quality and even in more useful movements by changing the distance of the object. I think the focus does comply with good quality, and while we saw that in photography the zoom was very well used, in the video it is not so much. So this is where the difference between devices that have a telephoto camera and devices that only use zoom inside the sensor is noticeable, since in video recording the level of detail is not as good. Indoors we will have a good quality video that does try to reduce noise, but fortunately keeps the colors well saturated. So I think the quality of this video is positive, as I don't notice aggressive jumps in exposure or aggressive jumps in white balance. In backlit video recording, it will give full priority to illuminate the face, so it may sacrifice the brightest areas of the background. When it stops detecting the face, it tries to balance those areas well, so it is not recommended to record in this type of conditions. The ideal will always be to record with the light from the front. And in the evenings, we will also have a simple recording. If there is a light source in the scene, obviously it will try to regulate all the exposure to adjust the light well. But in scenes where there is no light source, it does manage to capture enough light, but it is a video that we could consider simple, very similar to what we saw in the day team with respect to capturing movements. The advantage is that focus is not lost even at night. Fortunately, it does have digital stabilization, so when walking you can perfectly disguise the movements. But since it does not have optical stabilization, when running the digital stabilization is insufficient, so you might notice very aggressive movements. The slow motion will be simple in HD at about 20 frames per second, but for some social networks or simple videos it can be useful. On the other hand, fast motion can range from 10 to 960x. So you can record people's movements, although slightly faster than ideal. You can also record spectacular scenery, albeit at full HD as anticipated, so it can be useful, but it's not the most advanced thing we've found in the industry. Curiously, the front camera by default records in HD. Even in this resolution, it has no stabilization. Fortunately, it does let you go up to full HD for better quality, but it still doesn't have stabilization. Therefore, it is not so recommended for recording any content. And I also remind you that it doesn't do a good job with backlighting. Therefore, as with the rear camera, it will not be so recommended to record with the light behind, but only with front light. Like all devices in this price range, it has fixed focus on its lens. Therefore, the experience is simple. Indoors, something very similar to what we saw in photography will happen. That is, we have much paler colors, and even in this case a little more noise in the scene, especially in darker areas. And finally, in the evenings it will come out well as long as you have a light source nearby. Because in darker areas you will notice much more noise, especially if there is more movement in the video. The good news is that the screen illuminates well enough to at least rescue a little more illumination of your face, but I insist that it's a simple camera. It doesn't have front slow motion, but it does have fast motion with the same parameters we already saw on the rear camera, although it does feel like a low bit per second rate video. But one of the things I like the most is that it does have a dual recording mode, although the resolution is only HD, but at least it does allow you to take content from the rear camera and the front camera at the same time. Fortunately, it also has zoom and focus enabled, and you have, in addition to the split screen mode, the picture-in-picture mode, which also has two settings. A round setting that also allows you to move it along the screen with a stop on the right, and the same will happen with the rectangular mode. So it gives you very good options for blogging and creating content. The downside is that the resolution is really low by today's standards. Also, another drawback is that if you want to change the position of these cameras, you will have to first stop the video recording to start it again, and that now the front camera is the one that is bigger and the small box is the rear camera. The device arrives with Android 13 in its veins and the customization layer called Realme UI 4. Fortunately, in this case, the manufacturer does offer a clear update policy, so we have 2 years of software updates and 3 years of promised security patches for this device. Which is a very good thing, although not the most advanced in the industry, as Samsung is still ahead in this aspect, but without a doubt, this is one of the best devices in this section. In addition, it offers good features through software to take advantage of more functions of the device. For example, we have the smart sidebar, through which we have several shortcuts to different applications. And with this sidebar, we also have some special tools to record the screen, take screenshots, and some other things. Note that you can also open applications in floating mode from this part, and these windows can be resized or expanded across the entire screen. The detail is that you can only open one app at a time in this format, and you will notice that neither YouTube nor Instagram support floating mode. When you are inside the gallery, you can select multiple photos, and we have an option called collage, through which we can create combinations of different formats. So it can be another outstanding feature. In conclusion, it is a considerably simple system, although it comes heavily loaded with bloatware. As you can notice, there are many applications that add you, and if you buy it on Telcel, it will come with even more bloatware. Although fortunately, most of these added applications, you will be able to uninstall them without problems, but it can be somewhat annoying for many users. The software at the moment still feels a bit simple, although having guaranteed at least 2 updates, I think it could get better over time. This device also offers us a side fingerprint reader through which we can have up to 5 different registrations, and as you could see, it is enough to put and remove the finger for the unlocking to take place. The recognition is quite fast, and we can map any of our registered fingers to directly access the category of hidden applications. This device also offers a facial recognition system, although it is only in 2 dimensions, so as I always say, it is not so safe, just use it for convenience. But if convenience is your priority, I would recommend you to access this section of Google Smart Lock to adjust some trust conditions under which your device will remain unlocked. You also have Google Autocomplete, with which you are going to immediately type in the password and user, so I consider that feature to be insecure. But in Google settings, you can specify what you want to be prompted for the fingerprint every time it will autofill this kind of information. However, most manufacturers bring this option off for some strange reason, so my recommendation is that you go to turn it on immediately to be much safer. And in addition to the option to hide applications, this device also comes with an option to block access to applications, so you can have a second security filter in case you have lent someone your unlocked device. It also has a private safe through which you can securely store images, videos, audios, documents, or any other type of file. Finally, if you lose your cell phone, you will be completely dependent on Google, so there is not much chance of finding it. Therefore, in this aspect, I think it could still improve its security. The battery, like many other devices, is 5000 milliamps, but in my tests, I must tell you that it performed much less than one would expect. On average, I could tell you that in this case, it gave me an hour and 20 minutes less than what other devices usually give. So the battery really could be one of its weak points, although perhaps they could optimize something through an update. Fortunately, it does offer us a basic power saving mode and also a super saving mode in case of an emergency. So through these modes, you could get to extend the autonomy of this device, but I really do not think it gets to stand out in this section. Where it does stand out a lot is in its charging. It is a Super VOOC charger that has slightly large dimensions but charges very quickly. In 15 minutes, it recovered 41% of the energy, in 30 minutes it recovered 77%, and it finished charging to 100% in 45 minutes. So it's a really very good charger. And obviously take into account that this charger does come included in the box. It also has an optimized charging system that you can enable just overnight or all day, because if you're the type that tends to leave your device plugged in for a long time, the device is able to protect itself to charge much slower. The disadvantage is that it doesn't have some charging lock at a certain percentage, but still I think fast charging gives you a lot of advantage. In connectivity, we will find positive things because it does have support for 5G networks. In addition, it has an option to block access to the network through mobile data and allow only certain applications to connect via Wi-Fi, and thus you avoid unwanted surprises in your mobile data consumption. It also supports Wi-Fi 5 networks, so it still doesn't have speeds as high as what we find on Wi-Fi 6, but I think in this price range we could still accept this type of connectivity. It also supports Bluetooth 5.3 and it does have NFC, so you could make mobile payments simply by bringing your cell phone close to the bank terminal with compatible applications. It can also wirelessly project your screen not only to Chromecast but to other devices. In addition, it does include Android Auto and pretty much every sensor we could ask for, including a physical proximity sensor, so I think all around it's a complete device in the sensor area. Finally, it has a vibration motor on the Z-axis that we could consider weak, although common within the range. The Realme ecosystem can vary greatly depending on your region, but in Mexico it has several devices, including Realme Buds, Realme Pad, Realme Watch, so it definitely has a good catalog of products to coexist well with your cell phone. Although the brand could still continue to develop its ecosystem for better interaction because it is not yet so advanced, and in other aspects still depends heavily on Google as cloud storage that will be through Google Drive and control of home devices that will be through Google Home. However, remember that by having Android, it is an open operating system that can coexist well with other brands as long as they integrate technologies such as Nearby Share or Google Fast Payer. Let's talk about performance, because this device integrates the MediaTek Dimensity 6100 Plus processor, a processor that we haven't tested much, but it has a 6 nanometer construction process, so it should be advanced enough. It is accompanied by 8 GB of physical RAM and another 8 GB of virtual RAM. It took roughly 3.4 seconds on average to open each of these 16 applications, so I think we will also find good performance in terms of processor power when running applications. If you are this type of user who likes to have several applications open, you will also notice something very fluid. It seems that if you get to take good advantage of those 8 GB of RAM that integrates, then the exchange between applications is going to be considerably good. It does not feel that applications are restarting, nor does it seem that it is costing you much work to return to any application after having used another. In fact, when scrolling through some applications, you will also notice that if it is sufficiently fluid, it may take a little while to load more items, but that is very normal in this price range. The truth is that the use of everyday applications will be totally positive in this team. One of its strongest points will be the storage, because it offers 256 gigabytes, plus if you can put a micro SD, then we have plenty of capacity to have many photos, videos, audios and more. It is a device that you are hardly going to fill. Finally, let's do our test by exporting 4 clips together, all in full HD, to see how long it takes to export. Remember that the clip has a total duration of 1 minute. That's it. It took approximately 23 seconds to finish, and that's a very good thing. Obviously take into account that it's a full HD video, because this device can't record content in 4K yet. So for editing video in this resolution, I think it's very good. For games, this device has a specific application where we can have the compilation of the games we have installed. We can also access more games to install them. And we also have a specific search engine to explore new content directly from the Realme store. When opening a game, you will notice that we have the possibility to slide a special bar where we can see the count of frames per second. We can also enter a pro gamer mode that gives more performance to the device or access a power saving mode in case we do not want so much consumption. We can also open some applications in floating window to respond to our messages without leaving the game. It is also available a temperature monitor and also appear more options such as a focus mode that will avoid distractions. You can also disable notifications or put a different style so that they do not interfere so much on the screen. You can also block calls, take screenshots or screen recordings, optimize all network traffic to give priority to the game, optimize the touch response. You can block screen rotation, and you can even cache the game so that the next time you open it, it will run much faster. It also has a voice changer for games that support chat and an automatic resolution setting that only works with some games. You can also enable a constant monitor of frames per second, GPU consumption and CPU consumption, and in case the game is downloading some content, you can enable this option so that the screen turns off and is not consuming so much power. In summary, the manufacturer offers good additions through software to improve the gaming experience. In Call of Duty, by default, it gives us the average quality at an average frame rate as well. The only thing we can do is to go up to a higher frame rate, but honestly, in this price range, it is very strange that it doesn't give us more graphic quality and that therefore will be one of its weak points, plus it doesn't support so many graphic effects. The experience with this configuration will obviously be very good in terms of fluidity, but it does not offer us as many visual effects as if we could find in many competing devices, since in this price the most common thing is that they do allow us a higher graphic quality. Therefore, the performance really is not its most attractive point, although you do have a fluid experience, but I insist that you do not have so many visual graphics. So, if you are not one of those gamers who gives a lot of priority to textures, effects, explosions and more, surely this device will give you a good experience. In the Legends game we have an automatic setting, but for the test we turned it up to medium graphics detail and also turned it up to 60 frames per second. The experience again was good, with no lockup at all. In this case, the game seems to be better optimized with these processors that usually have some difficulties in the GPU, but here the truth is that everything went very well. Good stability, we also did not notice a heating beyond normal, so the experience on this specific content is very good. So as you can see, the graphic compatibility with this processor can also vary from one game to another, since here we did get to see a little more reflections and more advanced textures. In the SpongeBob game, by default it is set to medium resolution and quality. However, for the test, what we did was simply to go up to 60 frames per second for the price. In this case, the experience is again positive, although not 100% perfect, nor close to being 100% perfect, because the frame rate per second on average was a little far from 60, but overall the experience, I insist that it is good. Only if you are one of the most demanding gamers, you will surely notice that this device is not the best for gaming. But if you are a casual gamer, you will surely be able to enjoy this experience because it honestly does not get stunned at any time, and although it does not reach too high frames per second, you should also consider that it does not have such a high level of heating. Finally, in Genshin Impact, this device by default loads the graphics quality very low, but for the test we bumped it up to medium to 60 frames per second. With that setting, the experience was actually considerably good. Again, it is not going to give us a very high rate of frames per second, but I think 30 on average is something that will give you a good gameplay. Again, noting that the warm-up is light compared to what we've seen on some other devices. So the experience, I think, is good for those who are not so demanding, because if you are more demanding, you will probably notice that the screen does not respond as fast at times, especially when there are moments of much more action. So if your top priority is to play games, there may be better alternatives with processors more adapted to games, but if it is not one of your priorities, you will notice that it can give you an acceptable performance. For the moment, this has been all about this device. I hope you liked the video. If you did, you can tell us about it, and we will see you next time.